Joseph Mtonga YouTube channel from Jaram Science Academy. Last time when we were talking about cells, we said cells are organized from cell, tissue, organ, system, and organism. And also I mentioned that the approach in our study of our biology will be characteristics approach. And today we just want to look at the aspect of an organism. The cell is believed to be the smallest organism, as exemplified by a cell type known as amoeba. Amoeba is regarded as a single cell organism. It is able to carry out the 7 characteristics of living organisms which I've listed on the board. Now the characteristics are as follows. Number 1, reproduction. Number 2, growth. Number 3, feeding. Number 4, respiration. Number 5, excretion. Number 6, sensitivity. And number 7, movement or locomotion. So this single cell organism is able to carry out these characteristics, and we want to show how it does it. So that's why earlier on we said that a cell is a basic unit of life, and here the amoeba shows all the characteristics of living organism, which we said determine that someone is living. Now let us look at reproduction. How does amoeba carry out the process of reproduction? In amoeba, since it is a single cell organism, the way in which it carries out reproduction is by way of binary fission. Binary fission. So binary fission is an example of what we call asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. So in this way, what amoeba does is that you have the parent cell. For example, this could be the parent cell of amoeba, and then it divides into 2 daughter cells. This parent cell divides into 2 daughter cells, and this is what is referred to as binary fission, and it is a form of sexual reproduction. And these daughter cells have the same genetic material as the parent cell. So this is how amoeba carries out its reproductive process. Now, number 2, growth. How does amoeba show growth? Growth, as we said, can be in terms of height and in terms of size. So the way in which amoeba shows its growth is in terms of size. Now, for example, when you look at this small diagram here, which I've indicated here, you can see this is the parent cell, it is big, and these are daughter cells. Okay, so when these daughter cells grow to adulthood, then they will grow as big as this one. So they will grow in terms of size. So when it comes to amoeba, it grows in terms of size, from a smaller amoeba to a bigger amoeba. Then amoeba also, as a living entity and as a living organism, needs to feed. For example, these young ones, in order for them to grow, they need to feed. So feeding is important. So how does it feed? Normally, the way it feeds is, for example, since it lives in water, amoeba lives in water, and it is a protozoa, and in the medical field, it causes amoebic dysentery. So if you have suffered from dysentery, this is the causative agent. Now, how does it feed? Okay. Now, since it lives in water, most of the food is in soluble form, and it comes in by way of diffusion, by looking at the differences in concentration gradient. So the way in which it feeds is mostly by diffusion. If it has to feed solid food, sometimes there are some debris which it can feed on, then it has to do it by way of what we call phagocytosis. For solid food, it feeds by way the process known as phagocytosis. Now, in this form, what it does is that you have this amoeba. Then, if this is a food debris, then it will move its cytoplasm in this direction, and then you'll have a situation like this, and then you have the food debris in the middle. Then it will go on until it engulfs that food using its pseudopod, and then it creates a food vacuum. Okay. Then in the food vacuum, there are digestive enzymes which break down the food into digestible form, and in that way, amoeba eats its food by way of diffusion, that is already soluble food, and by way of phagocytosis if it is a solid food. Having said that, then this food has been digested. Then the next process is respiration. Respiration, as we defined it, the time when we were looking at these characteristics of living organism, we said that it is the breakdown of food to release energy. So in this particular case, amoeba does respire because the food that it has taken in needs to be broken down in order for it to provide energy. That's why in this cell there is mitochondria, and mitochondria does just that in amoeba. Then after the food has been respired, during respiration there are metabolic weights that are produced, especially carbon dioxide. And this carbon dioxide accumulates inside the amoeba and it has to be removed. And the way in which it is removed is by diffusion. Because now you will have, for example, here you'll have CO2 here in high concentration, and outside the cell it's low concentration. And the carbon dioxide will diffuse outside, and then here you have the entry of oxygen will go in. So again there, the way the excreted product will diffuse outside. And it is the same with other excretory metabolites which are formed during the process. They are removed by way of diffusion. Then sensitivity. We said that sensitivity is the ability for an organism to respond to outside environment. So how does an amoeba do that? Now, amoeba is sensitive and it can respond. And therefore, for example, it can be sensitive to light. And if there's too much light, maybe it can move away from light. And the way it does that is by a wave of cytoplasmic movement. So the cytoplasm will be driven away from maybe from that sensitive place. Or sometimes we saw earlier on, for example, when there's a food debris, then it moves its cytoplasm towards the food. And it is able to sense the chemical substances within water are the ones which stimulate, especially the membrane, which has a sensitive component, which are able to detect the surrounding environment. Then movement, we have seen some movement in terms of cytoplasm there. Cytoplasm waves are the ones which make the amoeba to move. So that is all in terms of amoeba as an example of a single cell organism. Question for reflection: explain how amoeba shows characteristic of living organism. Explain how amoeba shows characteristics of living organism. I'm your host, Joseph Mtonga. Remember to share, like, and